All right, good afternoon. It is exactly 34 minutes past 12. And yes, it is time for the amazing show, Parenting. Today, you want to find out what you're doing right. You want to find out what you need to do better at. This show is for you. You know that all these little children, these beautiful ones we call the future leaders of tomorrow, the future is here. They're here, and more so, you have to make sure you're doing the right things so that they turn out right. I'm no expert when it comes to parenting. I might be an expert when it comes to chitty chats, but not this. But I know someone who is, and she happens to be the pilot on the show. I'm the co-pilot. She is the CEO of the most amazing and a renowned platform for parenting. She's the LagosMums CEO. Her name is Miss Yetty Williams. Good afternoon.
Good afternoon, Paula. How are you?
I'm fine, thank you. How are you, ma'am?
I'm doing well. Thank you.
All right. It's great to have you on the show once again. Let's take a look at today's topic. Now, when I saw it, I was like, Miss Yetty, as usual, all of your topics are pretty much to die for or to look forward to. And more so, to be very fair, when I see them, they throw me off guard for a minute. Like, hey, wait a minute. Now, today's topic is, does leadership start from home? Miss Yetty, is there such a thing as leadership beginning from home? Because looking at it, I'm like, as a child, I may have struggled with, some esteem issues. And then seeing how some kids were bold and they were ready to take the reins. I want to know, does it begin at home or maybe in a school, the four walls of a school?
Yeah. So, I'm coming at this from a couple of angles. One is obviously raising a child who's going to be a leader, who can be a leader. Okay. And then also talking about, when we see bad leadership or we see bad governance around us, I find myself thinking into the future and saying, is it possible to start to change the narrative, right, from our homes? Okay. The family is the smallest unit of society, but then that's where we can actually create an environment that collectively, those family units in all their individual silos, right? They're the ones that become communities, the community that becomes the nation, that becomes, global and all of that. So if you think about it from that perspective, there's the individual leadership skills that a child might have, because some children seem to be born leaders, right? So there are those who, in every class, they are the ones who are more likely to be putting people together to do something. There are those who are a bit more timid. So can everybody learn leadership skills? I guess that's the question today. And I believe everybody can learn what good leadership is, whether or not you are in the position of being a leader in the way we call people leaders. Right? All right. I believe that leadership skills are something everybody can learn. Good leadership is something everybody can learn to recognize, right? So when you see what is quote unquote bad leadership, you actually know that actually this person, what I'm saying here is not the ideal example of what leadership should be. And what does it mean to be a leader? Or what does it mean to have leadership skills? It means you can galvanize people. It means you can get things done for the good of others. That's what I believe good leadership is that you do things that are for the good of others, for the good of everybody involved. It's not about having your way, at the expense of other people. It doesn't mean that you just lay down the law and if people don't obey, they don't follow you, then so be it. That is not leadership. Okay. Right? That's dictatorship. And I think at home, we can start to show that to our children because the parents are the first leaders that children will ever encounter.
All right. Miss Yetty, thank you for saying that, we as parents can get to show these children, leadership skills. But I want to ask, is there a way you can show your kids leadership skills while still balancing it? I say this because you know how you said, in the home, the parents just tell you something and the word is final. That's what we all, thought growing up. That was the norm. Now, just seeing that you have to put leadership examples, you have to set them for your children. How can you do that and maintain your authority in their lives and also still show them like a good way to be leaders? Like, you're not too brash, you're not too soft, and they take you seriously and they get the message at the same time. How can we achieve that?
When you are leading a group, whether it's your children, in the office place, a country, there's typically an outcome, right? There's typically a reason why you are in that leadership position. Either they elected you into it, which is, outside, or at home, you are the parent in the house. So you are a leader as a result of your position and you being blessed with giving birth to children. So as a result, you are a leader by default of being a parent. Now, leadership for me means that we are trying to achieve a particular outcome. In the home, you're trying to achieve an outcome where it's a cohesive unit, it's an enabling environment, there's love, there's discipline, right? And there's shared values in that home environment.
Okay.
Now, leadership includes all of that. In all of that I have said, there's nothing in there that means you have to do it, in a brash or harsh way. You can have all of those things and still be, a gentle, kind leader. Leadership does not mean that you have to be, harsh and aggressive for everybody to toe the line. You don't have to. Now, we're coming to children. So children are going to, question things. They're going to ask questions. They're going to be naughty. They're going to disobey. They're going to do all of those things. If you have a child who never disobeys, for me, I feel there's a problem.
Miss Yetty, no. I feel like the kids sent you here. How your children, like, the you know what, I'm joking when I say the kids sent you here. Like, how can't your children, like, just take orders? Why do they have to misbehave at least once or rebel once,
Once? I don't think it's once. If you have a child and you look in a 18-year journey and the only time they ever were quote and unquote naughty or disobeyed you was one time, I feel like, are you sure?
Yeah.
Or is your child so fearful that in your mind you are thinking they are not being they're doing everything I tell them to do perfectly? Maybe, or are you lying to yourself? No, but jokes apart, we are thinking human beings. Every single person born has their own mind, has their own DNA, has their own set of characteristics, has their way of responding to the world. So there is no way that because you gave birth to somebody, they are going to do exactly what you want, exactly the way you want it, all of the time. I don't think there's any kind of perfect parenting where that would ever be the scenario. However, we're not then saying that means that we should be encouraging children to be disrespectful, to be disobedient because they're thinking beings. That's not what we're saying. There's a bridge between those two, but I don't think any parent or any leader should expect that because I have my view of the world, that is the only view of the world, and I should not ever give room for other people to have another opinion. But to ask questions. You should always give room to ensure that the people understand where I'm coming from. The people understand why I'm saying this is important. And it goes back to family values. Do you have a cohesive, set of family values that everybody in that family understands your values? When they understand your values, it's easier for them to understand why this is what mom and dad expect. This is why mom and dad have these rules around certain things. And then they are able to toe the line because there's, understanding, there's love. Remember I mentioned all of that at the beginning?
Yes,
all of that involved is what makes parenting beautiful. And then when children learn that, even though my dad and mom, yes, they could just have shouted and beat me every time I didn't obey. But guess what? They took time to explain things to me. They took time to model to me the things that are important in this family. And I could see that they were also doing it. Those are the children that learn the basics of what good leadership looks like, so that when they go out there, they can become good leaders themselves. And when they're in an environment where they see faulty leadership, they're able to identify that, this person is not quite exhibiting, do you know what I mean? The leadership skills that I've come to expect from my upbringing and experience.
Oh, wow. Oh, Miss Yetty, thank you so much for, taking us down this path. To be fair, it's one that I've never really thought of, but you are reminding us that kids are watching our every move, and most of what we do, it has an impact on them. When they grow older, sometimes they think it's the right thing to do, even if it's not the right thing to do. Now, in a case whereby, mom and dad are in a house, who should be saddled with the responsibility of setting this leadership example? Is it both parents, or is it just one parent who should be saddled with this responsibility?
Both parents are absolutely required to teach children about leadership in two ways. One is by how they lead their children, and also how they're teaching their children to have leadership skills. So there are two things, right? One is how you lead your children. Mom and dad will have different styles. We've talked about parenting styles. They're hardly ever exactly the same, because partners are coming from different backgrounds, different upbringing. So how you believe children should be raised, how I believe children should be raised will be different based on our experiences. Then a couple now come together, they have to merge their parenting styles and ensure that they've done a SWOT analysis, right, of how they believe a family should be raised, so that they can be in sync. And where they're not in sync, there's open communication to say, okay, we're struggling here. Can we sit down and talk about it? That's an example of good leadership, right? So that when you're then talking to the children, guiding them, leading them, setting rules, they recognize that you are speaking from the same script. There's nothing worse than mom is saying one thing, dad is saying something else. You confuse the children. But you can come together as a cohesive unit so that the children see that, oh, mom and dad are on the same page to a large extent. Because in those homes where parents are not on the same page, the children know. And then they're always trying to figure out a way to play mom versus dad. Like, we know dad doesn't really care about screen time. But mom is the one that says we should get off screen at 10 o'clock. And mom Poku goes to bed early. So when mom goes to bed, we'll just go to dad and say, Dad, now, please, let's stay on longer. Maybe dad will say, okay, let me just, override mom's rule. That's an example. It's a very small example, but those examples are there. Now, in terms of raising children to have leadership skills, mom and dad, once again, have a role to play. And you can do this through things like making sure your child is involved in sports, for example. It could be teaching them to, run for maybe class president, to be the leader in their class. When they're in sports, there's certain things they're going to learn. Sometimes you're the one, whatever the sport is, you're the one, in the leadership position. Sometimes you're the one supporting the team. So children can learn leadership sometimes through that. And then lastly, let them see you doing things as well that show that it's important to you that you have a good leader. Let me explain that. So as a parent, no matter where you live, there's somebody leading your community and leading your country, right? Yeah. You can show your children how you participate in trying to make sure you have good leaders in those positions. Simple things like, are you voting? Okay. What are you saying about your leaders? Do you just sit and complain about your leaders, but you do nothing at all when it comes to the time to lend your voice? Wow. So those are, it seems complex, but if you look at it in those blocks of things and realize your children are learning from many of the things that you're doing, and it's a bit of everything. So leadership for me is twofold. A child learns leadership skills themselves, but then a child also learns what good leadership looks like from what parents can model at home.
All right. Thank you so much, Miss Yetty. For those who are listening, you have questions as regards parenting. More so, you want to make sure you're setting the perfect, or rather the best example when it comes to leadership. Home is where it all begins. Miss Yetty, I want to ask, when it comes to leadership, right, if we want to set the tone for, setting the right examples, should we focus more on discipline and authority, or should we focus on kindness? Because we don't want to you don't want to raise a weakling, right? And you don't want to raise a child that's too insensitive. How can there be a balance to it? Should we, focus more on kindness, servitude, or, authority, superiority? What are the things we can do if we're trying to set the tone?
So leadership, for me, it's a mix of everything. And, when we say kindness, because if I'm kind to my children, I don't see or believe that will then make them somebody that, people can take advantage of, because all they see is, oh, I just have to be kind. Kindness does not mean, not having values or not being able to recognize when somebody's mistreating you or not treating you in a way that is, what's what I'm looking for, that is healthy. So when we think about leadership, when we think about raising the children to face the future, to face the world that they will inherit, we know that they need a mix of things. They need empathy. They need to be kind to themselves first, even. They need to be kind to other people. They need to take turns. They need to know how to communicate, but at the same time, they're not supposed to be pushovers. So I'm not raising my children to be pushovers, which means anybody can treat you anyhow and you should just take it. Absolutely not. And we model all of those things at home by little things. So, for example, if you find that your children, when they're talking to each other, they can be quite mean to each other, or they're speaking to themselves harshly, I don't think any parent should celebrate and say, hey, good. You know what I mean? They don't have to take care of themselves.
What about some parents that would argue, like, you know what, there's such a huge age gap between them, so it's fine. You can be older than somebody, and and I don't think we should confuse respect with, being just
unbearable.
Age. Yeah, okay.
Because I'm much older than you, I have a sibling that's 10 years older than me, doesn't mean they should be slapping me and they should just tell me I don't have right and kick me, and when they come into the room, they just say, get out of here. No, I don't think that's not respectful. Nobody would want to be treated like that. And I think these are some of the things we need to start changing. Because there's a huge age gap does not mean that you should allow any child to treat their sibling like a second-class citizen, all because of age. However, there should be respect. So it goes both ways. If the older one asks the younger one to do something and the younger one perpetually doesn't respond, speaks back, says, whatever, I'm not going to do it, who are you? Then obviously a parent needs to step in there and say, hello, that is your older brother, your older sister. And they can ask you to do something and you must do it. If you don't do it, you will get into trouble with me because that is disrespectful. You've handled it. Do you know what I mean? But that does not mean that the older one then has the right to treat the younger one, in a very distasteful way, all because of age. So sometimes if you don't curb that, those are the people that when they get out there, they become tyrant leaders themselves.
Oh,
because
yeah.
at home, they were allowed to lord and master it over everybody.
All right. Oh, amazing. Thank you so much, Miss Yetty. Someone here, Ayuba from Agege says, good afternoon. Please ask the woman expert, when is the best time to tell children about politics? My son has been asking me about the protest today and I don't want to tell him. Okay.
Great question. I always say that with parenting, sometimes you don't have the luxury to necessarily say it is at this point, at this age, that I'm going to discuss this. Do you know what I mean? Yeah. Sometimes things happen externally that you should discuss. So I don't know how old his child is, but if his child is asking about the protest, the child has already heard about it, right? Whether it's at home, online, with friends, but the child has already heard. What I would advise this father does is to discuss it with the child. You can start with, oh, you're asking me, what have you heard about the protest? Sometimes that's a good place to start. So you recognize what the child already knows. Based on that, you can then have a conversation. I don't think it should be ignored because it's a good thing the child is asking the parent. And children today can find out whatever they want online. So it's better that as a parent, you guide them. Give them enough to recognize what's going on. Yes, some people are not very happy about XYZ. And as a result, the protests today are to do XYZ. You can leave it very, 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 what's what I'm looking for? Very high level. And that's enough.
Wow. Okay. Thank you so much. Thank you so much, Miss Yetty. Very well said. Patience from Festac Town says, good afternoon, Miss Yetty. For me, leadership is solely a man's role in the family because women are helpers. Let's not confuse gender roles for children at a young age.
Okay, that's your perspective. When you talk about maybe leadership being a man's role, I'm not talking about who's in the position of leadership in the house, right? So yes, the man is the head of the household. I suspect that's what she's saying. However, that does not mean then that a mother has no role whatsoever in teaching her children what good leadership looks like. As a mother, you are leading your children, right? So because you have a husband doesn't mean you're not leading your children. You're also teaching your children about leadership based on how you lead them and how you raise them and how you and your husband also communicate. So I don't think leadership is something that's gender specific. Every household has its own hierarchy of how things work. But your children are learning leadership from both mother and father, and everybody has a part to play.
Oh, wow. Thank you so much. We have quite an interesting, I don't know what to say. Okay, so this person says, "Good day, Mrs. Yetty. Please, my husband has a very loud voice, and even when he's happy, people mistake him for being angry. My son is in nursery too, and his teacher says he yells at his classmates, and he wasn't like this before. What should I do?" Anonymous from Chevron Drive.
That's interesting. The connection she's making, I wonder if she's thinking that the boy shouting in school
is learning from his father. That's what I felt.
From his father. Some people are just like that, where their voices are just loud. The only thing that you can do without causing any type of challenge or making it an issue is to just bring it up. That, did you know that XYZ is, let's just say your son's saying Buddy. Did you know Buddy's teachers said that Buddy has started shouting in class with his classmates? I don't know if it's something they've discussed before, but if indeed he's used to raising his voice and shouting, and that's his default, and it's not that he's angry, but that's just how he talks, then that's just him. However, if you have a young child who's picking that up, you might want to just discuss it. So maybe he finds a way to just modulate, how he speaks at home. If you think that that's where your son is learning it from and is therefore going to school and, then shouting in class, if that's what you think. And then you can also work with the teachers, because if the teachers, you mentioned that it wasn't like this before. So it'll be interesting to note, when did it change? You know what I mean? What was the trigger? When would the teacher say they noticed that he started shouting on his classmates? If they can identify that, perhaps they can also start working with him in class to say, we have a classroom voice. That's not an indoor voice. When you're indoors, there's a way to talk. So you have to work with both sides, but just recognize that it's possible your husband might not change because he's not even aware that that's how he comes across. So if that's how he's always been, then he's not aware. But if you know that you don't want your son to be going to school behaving like that, and the teachers have called it out, then you have to work with the teachers to say, how do we help him to unlearn that behavior now?
Oh, wow. Thank you so much, Miss Yetty. I have an interesting message. Somto from Maryland says, "Madam Yetty and Big P, good morning. Please, can a very quiet child still be a leader? My niece is super quiet and I'm scared she won't be a leading type. I'm just asking." That's Somto.
Absolutely. There are different types of leadership styles. Some people that are quiet, my goodness, they are powerful leaders without making too much noise. They can galvanize a whole group to do things, and you'll be like, is it that person that I always thought didn't talk? So let's recognize that somebody's personality might be quiet. It doesn't mean they don't have leadership skills.